In the Gospel of John, the reader is introduced to a woman from Samaria who meets with Jesus while drawing water in the heat of the midday sun. John 4:15 through 30 states, "The woman said to him, 'Sir, give me this water, so I will not be thirsty, nor come all the way here to draw.' He said to her, 'Go call your husband and come here.' The woman answered and said, 'I have no husband.' Jesus said to her, 'You have correctly said, I have no husband, for you have had 5 husbands, and the one whom you now have is not your husband. This you have said truly.' The woman said to him, 'Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet.'" This passage has been used many times as an illustration of an immoral woman who had perceived that Jesus was the Messiah. Yet few bother to explain why the Samaritan woman is an immoral woman. While it is possible that the Samaritan woman is living in some kind of sin, I believe there is more to her story than most people consider. Yes, she has had 5 husbands, but we need to ask why she has had so many husbands. In this video, we will examine some issues that might demonstrate that the Samaritan woman was not an immoral woman, but a victim of circumstances. Issue number 1. Women typically could not divorce their husbands. When examining the woman at the well, we have to remember that her societal context is different from ours. If a woman today has had that many husbands, it is assumed that she is not quite right, or that she has commitment issues. However, in the first century, typically only men could have a divorce granted. The biblical account contains examples of how men can divorce their wives, but it is a different situation if a wife wants to divorce her husband. Deuteronomy 24:1 states, "If a man takes a wife and marries her, and it happens that she finds no favor in his eyes because he has found some decency in her, he can write her a certificate of divorce, give it to her, and send her out of his house." Unfortunately, men could divorce their wives for any number of perceived indecencies. What can constitute a divorceable reason was debated much by the Jewish rabbis. Some claimed that it must be a sexual offense, but others claimed it was much more broad. The House of Shammai says, "A man may not divorce his wife unless he finds out about her having engaged in a matter of forbidden sexual intercourse. In other words, she committed adultery or is suspected of doing so, as it states, because he has found some unseemly matter in her, and he writes her a scroll of severance." The House of Hillel says, "He may divorce her even due to a minor issue, for example, because she burned or oversalted his dish, as it is stated, because he has found some unseemly matter in her," meaning that he found any type of shortcoming in her. Rabbi Akiva says, "He may divorce her even if he found another woman who is better looking than her and wishes to marry her, as it is stated in that verse, and if it comes to pass, she finds no favor in his eyes." While the Jewish rabbis gave any number of reasons why a woman might be divorced, there is one particular reason why a woman might be divorced multiple times, and that brings us to issue number 2. Women were often divorced because of barrenness. Dealing with a barren wife was done in the ancient world in one of 2 ways. The most common was for a man to take a second wife, purchase a concubine, or sleep with one of his female slaves. Perhaps the most famous example of this was when Abraham had a child by his maidservant Hagar. The other method was to divorce your wife and to marry another. According to rabbinic tradition, a husband should divorce his wife after 10 years of childless marriage. She is, however, permitted to marry again. Mishnah Yevamot states, "A man may not neglect the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply unless he has already had children." House of Shammai says, "One fulfills this mitzvah with 2 males," and House of Hillel says, "A male and a female," as it is stated, "Male and female he created them." If a man married a woman and stayed with her for 10 years, and she did not give birth, he is no longer permitted to neglect the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply. Consequently, he must either divorce her and marry someone else, or take another wife while still married to her. If he divorced her, she is permitted to marry another man, as it is not necessarily on her account that she and her first husband did not have children, and the second husband is permitted to stay with her for 10 years. And if she had a miscarriage, he counts the 10 years from the time of the miscarriage. A man is commanded with the regard to the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply, but not a woman. Other cultures of the ancient Near East had similar rules for divorcing a barren woman. For example, in Babylon, there were rules protecting women who were divorced after having borne children, however none for those who were barren. For example, in the law of Hammurabi 137 it states, if a man wished to separate from a woman who has borne him children, or from his wife who has borne him children, then he shall give that wife her dowry, a part of the unfrucked field, a garden, and property, so that she can rear her children. When she has brought up her children, a portion of all that is given to the children equal to that of one son shall be given to her. She may then marry the man of her heart. Law 138 states, if a man wishes to separate from his wife who has borne him no children, he shall give her the amount of her purchase money and the dowry which she had brought from her father's house, and let her go. There are no provisions for the wife being divorced childless. The third issue is that barrenness was often seen as a curse by God. In other words, the woman has brought it upon herself for some perceived sin. In Jesus' time, most women were seen as having only one purpose, which is to make babies. So barrenness must be a curse from God. In Leviticus 20 through 21, it states, if there is a man who lies with his uncle's wife, he has uncovered his uncle's nakedness. They will bear with him their sin. They will die childless. If there is a man who takes his brother's wife, it is abhorrent. He has uncovered his brother's nakedness. They will be childless. Here, the punishment for sexual sins was to be childless. Likewise, King Abimelech's entire household was cursed with barrenness. For the Lord has closed fast all the wombs of the household, it stated, because Abimelech took Abraham's wife, Sarah. Michal, the wife of King David and the daughter of King Saul, was known as an immoral wife who worshipped idols. The author of 2 Samuel recorded her death thusly. Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no children until the day of her death. The fourth and final issue concerning the woman at the well is that barren women who are divorced or even widows could not survive on their own. Women in biblical times, from a legal standpoint, were handled akin to property. This is, of course, dependent on their financial and social status. This means that they would be deterred from owning land or other forms of property, although they could obtain property through a dowry or through certain divorce guidelines, but these situations were rare and usually applied to the upper class. Unfortunately, this means that widows and divorcees of lower socioeconomic classes could hardly survive without resorting to prostitution or to begging. They were dependent on the generosity of others. This fact is best explained and demonstrated by laws concerning levirate marriage. For example, in Deuteronomy 25 it states, if brothers dwell together and one of them dies and has no son, the wife of the dead man shall not be married outside of the family to a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go into her and take her as a wife, and perform the duty of a husband's brother to her. And the first son whom she bears shall succeed to the name of his dead brother, that his name may not be blotted out of Israel. Now, if a woman were the product of divorce like the Samaritan woman at the well, her path forward would be even more difficult. Divorce specifically brought about a degradation of social status. Moreover, it could bring shame on the family of the woman and herself. She would have been an outcast in society once divorced. If she was particularly attractive, she could remarry. However, if it happened that she was truly barren, then there is a good chance that another divorce would be coming. So what can we conclude about the Samaritan woman with 5 husbands? I believe that there is a real chance that the Samaritan woman was barren, and that she was truly unable to remain married because of this. She was not able to provide a son for any of her husbands. If she wanted to live a life of immorality, she could have become a prostitute and not had to lean on the help of a man. She didn't need to be married 5 different times. She did not have to be married to a man in order to live in sin. That can be accomplished as a single woman. The harlots Delilah and Rahab both had their own places to live in, as far as the stories lead us to believe. The other reason why I think she might have been barren is that when Jesus encountered prostitutes and immoral women in the Gospels, he forgave their sins and told them to go and sin no more. However, no such exchange happens in this passage. Jesus never actually corrects any of her behavior. Lastly, she bears no sign of being embarrassed or remorseful for living in this situation. Other sinful women fall at Jesus' feet and repent. She does nothing of the sort. If she is cohabitating sinfully with her current man, then certainly that is worth pointing out, but it seems that there was likely a good reason for the situation that she was living in, and that is why Jesus did not pass judgment on her. And if Jesus passes no judgment on her, then neither should we.